It all started in 1974 when we were the original source for New York creatives. Today, Adorama's got it all. Photography, gaming, music, and more. But one thing hasn't changed. No matter your medium, Adorama helps you create no matter what. Access our vast catalog of gear. Get pro-level support and customer service from the experts. Adorama. Create no matter what. Learn more at Adorama.com.
You know what it's like to endlessly seek a remedy. Are you ready for a prescription that's once daily, steroid-free?
VTAMA Tapinarof Cream 1% is a prescription topical treatment for adults with plaque psoriasis. Do not use if you're allergic to VTAMA Cream. The most common side effects of VTAMA Cream include red raised bumps around the hair pores, pain or swelling in the nose and throat, skin rash or irritation, including itching and redness, peeling, burning or stinging, headache, itching, and flu. Tell your doctor about all the medicines you take, and if you're pregnant or plan to be, ask your doctor if VTAMA Cream is right for you. You deserve more from your topical. To learn more, visit topicaluprising.com.
Let's talk fashion. Whether you're looking for a sexy weekend look or a versatile blazer, the latest collection at Ashley Stewart is just for you. Ashley Stewart has been outfitting style-obsessed women in sizes 10 through 36 since 1991. We've perfected the art of complementing your curves since always. From new denim, dresses, modern workwear, and more, runway-ready styles for every mood and occasion. Time to stop settling and start celebrating. Shop the latest trends in sizes 10 through 36 now, in stores and at AshleyStewart.com.
This is the Jabberjaw Podcast Network.
Greetings. Hello. I'm Ray Harkins, and you're listening to 100 Words or Less, the podcast. I'm looking at you, who's reading a book and also listening to this show, or I'm speaking to you, person on the treadmill at the gym, or maybe you're just driving, because that's where most people listen to podcasts. But thank you for joining us on another exciting week of a in-depth dive into independent music, punk, hardcore, indie rock, emo, whatever you want to classify it as. That's what we talk about here. So thank you. And last week, I apologize for the hecticness of the intro and the outro. I actually had more than one person email me or reach out to me and say, hey, are you okay? Yes, I'm okay. I just was packing too much into a very short period of time. And I was thinking that like, oh yeah, I could probably record this like when I land at 11 at night in Chicago. Well, it was a bad idea. So I appreciate for those of you that were concerned about my well-being. I am fine. I am back in my normal recording scenario. And yes, now everything's in this comfortable place. So yeah, thank you. Anyways, the guest this week is Thomas Pearson. He is the vocalist for a now defunct hardcore band called Foundation. And Foundation were an incredibly important band to me. I feel like they took the banner of straight edge hardcore and waved it very proudly, very prominently for many years. Late 2000s, late aughts, early 10s. I don't know what you call this decade that we're in. 10s? I guess that makes sense. But anyways, I've wanted to have Thomas on for quite some time, and basically we were corresponding maybe about a month or two before the band actually played their last show, and he was like, hey, let me get through this, and then we can talk, and I can have a little more clarity and perspective over the whole thing. So I was like, hey, sounds absolutely perfect. So we were able to do that over Skype one day, but I got to talk about some other stuff first. So like I said, I was in Chicago and it was incredible. And the thing that I realized that makes this weird independent music culture so cool is the fact that, I find that most people that get attracted to this and, play in bands, like they tend to travel and adventure. And it's always funny for people that, are part of the normal world and don't have the same sort of experiences as we do. I find it so bizarre that like I can go to any major metropolitan city and have a few people that I know there, because most people, they travel and they don't know anybody there because they don't have family and they've never been to the city before. And it's just always funny because, here I am, all my coworkers are like, oh, you staying in our hotel? And I was like, no, I'm staying with my friend who I've known for 15 plus years. Shout out to you, Mike. And it's so much fun because obviously I'm able to hang out with a friend, not only on top of that, get a free place to stay, but have more of an experience with the city. And it's fun. I just really, really enjoy the fact that music is this communal thing. It brings us all together. We bounce off one another. We end up at different places. But ultimately, that's kind of what really holds us together when we travel to different places and are like, oh, hey, I'll be able to meet up with this person, or I can see this friend. Or even if you don't know anybody, you travel to a record store, which is what I did. I went to Reckless Records, amazing store. I also went to Chicago Diner, great vegan food. And I met a person there, Jeff, I want to say. I'm totally blanking on his name. Used to play in Expire. Real good dude. He just came up to me and was like, hey, he was actually working there, and said, hey, is that a Sick of It All polo you got on there? And I said, yes, it is. And so we started to converse and realized that our paths have crossed before that. And anyways, just music. Music is great, isn't it? It's diverting from music, but another live communal experience that I really enjoyed recently was seeing Louis C.K. I saw him at not the Hollywood Forum, the Inglewood Forum, where the Lakers and I think the LA Kings used to play. I could be wrong, but it was just unbelievable. Fortunately, I had amazing tickets, 4 rows back, just because I hopped on the pre-sale immediately. I'm not saying that because I'm cool, but it was such an engaging experience because, it felt like he was playing to 500 people, even though there was, I want to say 13,000. It was a ton of people, completely sold out. And he's incredible. He's one of the most talented people in that sphere. And even outside of that sphere, he's just an incredibly creative brain. And to watch a person work on that level, I felt like I was witnessing something special, in the same way that, when people saw Richard Pryor and Steve Martin, in the late 70s, early 80s, they saw these, balls of fire and just these ideas bouncing off of themselves and other people. And it's just amazing. So a bunch of amazing stuff. I just wanted to put it all out there. So anyways, here is Thomas, and I'm very excited to bring you this conversation because, like I said, Foundation was an incredibly important band to me, and I'm excited to bring this to you. So here's Thomas, and I will talk to you after the episode is over. So I was all in on Foundation almost immediately. I think it was a combination of obviously enjoying the music, but then there's nothing cooler than when you grab onto an aesthetic of a band as well. And those Matt Miller shirts, the photo series that you guys did, earlier in the band's career, I was just like, holy shit, it's the coolest thing I've ever seen. And I don't know if anyone else has obviously expressed their love for those shirts and or the fact that you guys did multiple ones of those. But I love the combination of those two things. I presume that was a very intentional step for you guys to introduce those shirts to the world, and the fact that you're working with a longtime friend.
Okay, so just for clarification, are you talking about the This Is War shirts that have the live picture on the front?
I am absolutely talking about those, yes.
Okay, yeah. So, Matt was, he was taking pictures at our shows to begin with. And at the time, I feel like he was the only photographer that was really taking pictures in the way that he was doing it. He'd set up off-camera lighting and have all this they would sync together. So when he would take these pictures of the room, it just was filled with so much light and everything was crisp and had all this crazy detail. And I was like, oh, we gotta get a Matt picture on a shirt. It's the best looking photo of a hardcore band I can think of. And it just kind of evolved from there. And I didn't want it to just be, kind of the typical, okay, here's the front man, here's the crowd, he's pointing the mic out, and there's some text. I wanted everybody to be included in it. So the very first one we did was of our guitar player, Andrew. And then we kind of worked our way through each member of the band. And then we finally did a group shot one of this really great picture that this dude Ken took at United Blood. And then, that's kind of how it started. I wanted to put the picture on the front and then put the text on the back, which kind of throws a lot of people off.
Right. I think what made it so, interesting for me too, just obviously as a person that, didn't know any of you guys and only kind of tangentially knew Matt, was just the fact that it was obviously it was a deliberate step in a direction that was okay, everybody is seeing the live hardcore shirt photo. Like that's tried and true. Like everybody can do that at any point in their band's life. But the fact that you guys obviously, like you said, kind of twisted it around and were like, okay, we want to utilize it in a different way that, might not necessarily make the most sense because, yeah, like you said, the band's name is on the back of the shirt and maybe not easily recognizable. But I really identified with that. I mean, have other people obviously come to you and been like, oh, I love those shirts, or am I the only lone voice in the wilderness?
No, people definitely like them, and they it's like they collect them too, because like I said, there's one for each member of the band. And actually we did, it's funny you bring this up, like this is where we're starting at, because when we played our last show last weekend, we did a secret show the night before. And at that secret show, I made 2 of those shirts in like really like obnoxious colorways, like an orange shirt and a purple shirt that had like blue and yellow ink on them. Uh-huh. And I did them for the 2 members of the band who actually didn't get them while they were in the band. So previously our friend Tim Hott played bass for us, and that was on the Hang Your Head recording. And for this like crazy summer, we always call it the Die Hard summer because we did 3 full US tours back to back to back in this one summer on that 7-inch. And he did all of those with us, but he never got a shirt with him on it. And then our other bass player, Wildcat, who took over after Tim and played on When the Smoke Clears, and basically toured with us up until about 2 years ago when he moved to California, maybe even 3 years ago now. Anyway, an amount of time has passed,
right?
But he didn't get one either. And I always like kind of felt bad about that. So for this show, I made those 2 shirts, one with Tim playing bass on the front of it, and one with Wildcat actually playing guitar, which was an instrument he didn't play in the band, on the front of the shirt. But for one tour, he did play guitar for us.
That's amazing. That's a very nice nod of respect to those people that obviously played with you guys when probably very few people cared.
Yes. And like, they were there in like, I mean, they weren't bad. We always had, awesome shows on tour, but we also had some bad shows, and they were there for a lot of those. So
right. The thing that also endeared me about what it was that you guys were doing, not only musically, but just the sense of pride. I mean, obviously not only the band, but yourself personally with Atlanta, and obviously waving that banner so high of we're from Atlanta, and there's a potent, vibrant hardcore scene here, and we're trying to make sure that everyone is aware of that and pays attention to it. Was that just like kind of a natural evolution of the band, or was that kind of your mission statement from the get-go?
I can honestly say that was probably a mission statement for us when we first began the band. The thing about Atlanta, and I can speak a lot on this because I'm from here. I'm like raised here. I've been going to shows here the entire time. Is that Atlanta's always had a really great hardcore scene. Like awesome bands have come up here. We've always taken care of touring bands when they come here, tried to make the best shows possible, real connected scene. But unless you come here and you experience that, you just don't know about it. And I think that's the case for a lot of places that aren't like Los Angeles or Chicago or New York or Boston or DC even. You just don't know about it unless you go there. So when we started the band and we're like, all right, well, we're going to tour. Like, we're going to leave this state and we're going to go places. That was almost like priority number one, is to be like, at least for me, every time I got on stage, I was like, we're Foundation and we're from Atlanta. And I might say that 10 times during a set because I wanted people to know, like, that's where we're from. We're from Atlanta, and we love that place, and we want you guys to all know about it.
Right. I love that too, because I mean, my experience with the city was definitely like, I used to play in a band, and we toured with, well, technically they were Downpour, but obviously turned into Power and the Glory. It was that was my first sort of introduction to that proverbial scene, and obviously Jock Records and everything that's kind of, circled that area. But I did always have that real sense of banner waving from pretty much everybody that's existed in that city or played in a band, which I find so endearing, because a lot of bands like, whatever, that are surrounding a particular metropolitan area, maybe say they're from that area, but they're not actually from that area. And so it's like, a band from LA, but they live like, an hour south or whatever. And so it's like, I always like it when people can really, put that stake in the claim and be like, no, like we're from Atlanta and we love this. And this is why we're trying to take care of the scene. Yeah.
I mean, it's funny too, because, not a lot of us actually grew up in the downtown area. Atlanta's like, Atlanta has a little bit of like a Southern California vibe where it's like you have the city itself and then you have kind of the suburban sprawl around there, but it's a lot of sprawl. So a lot of us grew up either north or south, just north or south of the city, about 20 minutes. But we don't have, like satellite scenes here. Everything takes place in the city. So you go downtown for shows. That's where everything's happening. That's where you go to eat with all your friends before or after. That's where you hang out on the weekends. That's where the record shops and everything are. So it's always had that central feel. And it's kind of funny because we were all like, okay, we're, when you get to the age, like you're out of high school, like we're moving to the city finally. And like you move into these like bad neighborhoods and dumpy warehouses and stuff because you just want to be here in the city so bad. And it's funny now because me and my wife, we just bought a house last year. And I literally live right around the corner from this place called the Whiteford House. And that was like central base for Atlanta hardcore from like 2006 to 2010. Like that's where every band stayed when they came through town. That's where everybody kind of did like a term of service. Everybody lived in and out of that place on and off. And it's like, I don't know, it kind of feels great just living right around the corner from there.
Right. It feels comfortable.
Yeah. I mean, this is the thing that I know.
Yeah, I love it too because it's like there are very few subcultures that have these iconic things that are basically essentially meaningless to most other people. Like you could drive by that house, like 98% of the population of Atlanta could drive by that house and be like, oh, like that's a house. But you're like, no, like you said, for these 4 years, like you had people from all across the entire world, like sleeping here, creating art, all that sort of stuff. But it's just like, oh yeah, it's kind of irrelevant to most people.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, like it is. They're very important, and I think if you're involved in the scene, you kind of understand the milestone of places like that. It's like there was a collected energy here, and nobody lives in that house now. It's actually vacant and probably going to get knocked down because the whole neighborhood's getting all the houses are being flipped and renovated, and it's when that happens, that thing won't be there. Just like the ghost of that energy will be left there,
right?
And that kind of makes me a little weepy when I think about it.
Yeah.
But when we were writing Turncoat, the last record, and I was trying to think of like artwork, I at one point was trying to convince the band, and my wife was a photographer, and Matt Miller. I was like, oh, we should go burn the Whiteford House down and take pictures of it and put that on the cover.
Dude, that would have been a pretty incredible. I mean, a very fitting demise for something that would obviously is very meaningful to you and the Atlanta scene. That's pretty funny.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I know that at some point somebody's going to take that from us, so it's like we might as well just destroy it ourselves.
Totally. And you're like, well, technically it's arson, but at the same time, like people would probably understand.
Yeah, yes, my wife was like, I'm not okay with that, and I was like, I know, but like it's kind of a win-win because they're going to knock it down. I'm sure the guy who owns it has like pretty good insurance on it. Like
totally, he's probably. But yeah, I like how you can rationalize your way into it. You're like, yeah, it'll be fine. Like they'll be fine. They'll collect insurance money, and then we've done a service. We've done a service.
We've done something good for the community.
Hey, you over there. I'm talking to you. Yeah, do you have any idea what your credit score is? No, you don't? Well, guess what? Neither did I until my good friends at Credit Karma. So credit scores, those two words are absolutely key to your financial reputation, and you may not even realize how important they are. Your credit score may impact important things in your life, from your car, student loans, mortgage, interest payments. But here, I'm here to solve a problem for you, right? Because that's what I do here. I do here at the show. I solve your problems. So Credit Karma. Great company. What they do is they give you completely free credit reports and scores with no hidden costs or obligations. They also provide free credit monitoring so you can stay on top of your accounts and get alerts right on your phone. In fact, there are 50 million people that are signed up for Credit Karma right now. I did it. It's like the easiest thing ever. And then I got a number back and I was like, oh, wow, I've got pretty good credit. That's why I've been able to purchase a home. That's why I've been able to purchase a car, and people aren't like, oh, no, this guy is not trustworthy. So the more you know about that number, the easier it is for you to be able to make valuable decisions in your life. Trust me, like, I'm a dad. I know what's up at this point. I've got dad knowledge and dad strength. Now I am bequeathing this upon you. So go to creditkarma.com/value, and you never have to enter a credit card. It really is free. And what you'll be able to do is get your free credit report and scores. There's no hidden costs, no obligations whatsoever. So seriously, sign up for it. Do it now, and you'll become educated. And frankly, you're going to become better than all your friends. Do you want to be better than your friends? Well, I mean, maybe not in a mean, selfish way, but like, you'll just have a little edge up on them. You're like, yo, I'm 750. And they're like, I have no idea what that is. And then you know what? You look smarter than them. So visit creditkarma.com/value. Do it today and know what's up. Here, now on with the show. And speaking of community, like you said, you were born and raised basically in the Atlanta area, like but like you said, the suburbs.
Yeah, I'm one of the few people that was actually born in the city. Like, I was born at a hospital down here and just lived, like I said, like 20 minutes north of the city up until high school, and then moved down here, and I've been here ever since.
Got it. And what was what's your family structure like? Like a mother and father, brothers and sisters, and what did they do for a living?
Well, both my parents, my dad was in the military. So this is, I guess what I just said was kind of a lie, because when I was born, we only lived here for a few months, and then we moved to Germany for like the first 5 years of my life, because my dad was in the military and he got stationed.
Okay.
Is stationed over there. And, myself and my mom lived there, and then their relationship kind of came to an end because of, he was abusive to her. So that was a thing that we had to get out of.
Sure.
So I went with my mom, and we moved back stateside, and we moved in with, her parents, my grandparents on that side, and lived there for about, I don't know, maybe 6 months. And then, this is all a really transitional period. Like, when we came stateside, English wasn't my first language. So it was kind of real weird to be thrown into this environment. And then we moved out, and we moved into this like really crappy duplex, and kind of like, not like the worst part of town, but like not a great part of town, where it's like a lot of windows are boarded up and people just leave their front doors open and they're just hanging out in their driveways all day. And that's kind of where I spent all of like my elementary school years up until my mom got remarried, and then I had a little bit more of a structure there.
Right. Do you actually still know how to speak German?
The thing is when I hear it, I recognize it, but I can't do it now because when I was younger, I had a really traumatic experience at school, and I was like, I'll never speak it again. So even when my grandparents would try to speak it to me, I was like, no, I'm not doing that.
Wow. Oh, okay. You obviously have an affinity to a certain extent, but then if you were to actually speak it, that would bring up the horrific memories that you have centered around this traumatic event.
It's not like, it's not like that. It's not like, if I start speaking it, like it just brings these like terrible memories back. Uh-huh. It's just at a young age, I was like, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to save myself the embarrassment. And just from lack of doing it, it's like, degenerative. I just can't really do it anymore.
Sure.
Yeah.
And so I didn't hear in there. Did you have brothers and sisters during this time? Was it just you and your mom?
No, I'm sorry. I only child.
Okay. Got it. No, I am too. We got to stick together.
Yeah. And then,
because so many people, I always get the question where it's just like, oh, do you want brothers or sisters? And I love my experience of being an only child. I got all the attention, obviously.
Yeah. That is the argument that people make for being an only child. But, God, I don't want you to think that I'm like hamming this up in some way or like painting some pity story or anything like that. But like, growing up, the only position that my mom could get when I was a kid was working nights for a company that manufactured contact lenses. Mm-hmm. So it was kind of the inverse of that. Like when I would see her, I would get a lot of attention, but I didn't see my mom most times because she was either asleep or at work.
Right.
So I went through this phase, like this life where I basically taught myself how to do everything as far as like, okay, I'm going to make my own breakfast. I'm going to make my own dinner. I'm going to like dress myself for school tomorrow.
Right. So what were those years that you were obviously, basically figuring stuff out on your own?
Kind of liberating. you know, as liberated as you can feel as like a little kid, it's kind of cool. Like it's weird because you're so young that you kind of have like this weird fear of the world where you're like, oh, I don't want to go too far because everything I know is in this house right here. But you're not tied down to anything. You're not tethered to much. So you feel a little bit freer. Mm-hmm. So a lot of mistakes I can make on my own.
Right. Sure.
This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. I myself am a huge advocate for therapy, and I think that most people would benefit from it because, you know, life just really gets in the way sometime. Whether it's a relationship issue, a family issue, a work issue, you feel overwhelmed. You don't know where to turn to. You're like, I can't bug my family and friends about this. Like maybe I'll be able to, you know, just push through it on my own. You do not need to be alone in this journey. And that is why BetterHelp is such a cool option. They are convenient because it's flexible, affordable, and entirely online. And all you do is fill out a brief questionnaire and you get matched with a licensed therapist. And you can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. I love what they do, and I would really, really encourage you trying therapy for the first time. If you want to live a more empowered life, therapy can absolutely help get you there. Visit betterhelp.com/Ray to get 10% off your first month. That is betterhelp.com/Ray. Try therapy, and trust me, it will make your life better.
It all started in 1974 when we were the original source for New York creatives. Today, Adorama's got it all. Filmmaking, gaming, music, and more. But one thing hasn't changed. No matter your medium, Adorama helps you create no matter what. Tap into the source for tools, tips, and gear. Gamers, join us on Twitch. Connect with eSport champs and take your game to the next level. Adorama. Create no matter what. Learn more at adorama.com/gaming.
Day 3 of my exclusively adult Virgin voyage. Last night, as I dined on the truffle gnocchi from one of the Michelin star chef-curated menus, I discovered something about myself. I do not miss the chicken nuggets in the back of our freezer. I do not miss them at all.
Book a Virgin voyage by February 28th for 55% off your second sailor and up to $600 in free drinks. Ask your travel advisor or visit virginvoyages.com. Now we're voyaging.
How old were you?
This would have been from the time that I was like 6 up until 11.
Okay.
Roughly. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, because there's definitely, I always share this story, like, you know, when people ask what it's like to be an only child or whatever, not like this is a regular topic of conversation, but, you know, I tell people it's like, oh yeah, like I played the board game Monopoly by myself and like I had alter egos that I played against. And like, I know most people hear that and are just like, that sounds like the saddest thing I've ever heard. But like, I look at that period of time in my life. I was like, I was so stoked I did it because like it fostered this weird imagination that I had. And like all, like you said, kind of the, you weren't able to rely on anybody. It wasn't like, you know, like you said, you obviously were putting all these pieces together and learning about the world around you. And I think there is a lot of that, I wouldn't say hand holding, but it's just a lot of the mistakes that you can make are sometimes really good when you're young and you're obviously in a relatively safe environment where you're not like making these catastrophic life altering mistakes, you know? Yeah.
And like, I was talking to somebody about it recently and I was like, it's a thing where, and now it affects me now because I get really, almost defensive when somebody tries to critique something or like even just explain something to me because I get mad that maybe I couldn't figure it out myself because that's what I've done for so long. And even when it came to like mistakes, there's, you know, my mom's asleep during the day. She's going to wake up for a brief period in the evening before I see her before she goes to work. So it's like any mistakes that I make in that time period, I have time to correct them before the authoritative figure figures it out.
Right. That's amazing. You're like, I got to clean this mess up. I got to put this thing back together.
Yes.
That's so good. And so then did you, I presume because of obviously the fact that there wasn't a central father figure in your life, like you and your mom created a pretty strong bond?
Yeah, we had a really strong bond when I was younger. And I think especially for my mom, she's been in a couple of not great relationships since my dad.
Right.
And I think for her even more so, it's like I have been for her like this one constant in her life. and it kind of forces her to like cling on a little too much. And so that's caused strain later in my life. When I was younger, it was great because it's like, oh, you're my mom. You love me a lot and I love you a lot. But as you get older, it's like, okay, I'm trying to make my own way and you won't let go of me, basically.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I can imagine that being a struggle, especially when you see your mom, like once you start to have an awareness of the relationship pattern that she might have in hooking up with guys that obviously like you're like, this is not a good scene. This reminds me of the last person of this particular situation. And I can only imagine where it's like you do have to sort of pull the tether in certain respects.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because like, I guess not funny, but when I think about that, it's it was this way. And like I was saying, it was good for a certain time, but as you get older, it kind of like it's not good. It's like, it's kind of detrimental to keep hanging on so tightly. And I wasn't until I was about to graduate high school that my mom stopped working nights and got like a regular job and then wanted to like hang out with me more. And it was, by that point, it was kind of too late.
Right. Yeah, you're like, I got
all these friends I've made at shows and stuff, and I want to hang out with them all the time.
Right, totally. You're like, well, we had our time, Mom. Like this, this is marking the end of this era.
Yeah.
And so, what kind of kid did you find yourself being as you obviously started to develop more of your identity in like junior high and high school? Like, were you a sport dude? Were you, really into school? Like, where did you find yourself?
Well, I did really well in school up until high school. And then I kind of checked out at that point because I didn't really fully understand I should preface this by saying I'm going into teaching.
Even better.
Yeah, I didn't really have an appreciation for education at that point because I was, I've always kind of like, you're a punk even when you're in like middle school. You know that you're into different things than other people. So I was already kind of on that path, and then I was like, well, I don't want to go on to like college and hang out with these people. I was like, that seems terrible. So it just trickled down into being like, I don't want to be here. I don't care about this place. But as a kid, like, I don't know. I was never super into sports. I like playing with my friends. I don't know. It's weird. I could easily sit inside all day and watch movies, or I could be outside all day, like playing and like hiking and riding bikes and all that stuff with my friends. So I don't know. It's weird.
Yeah, you strike me. I mean, even though we've been in the same rooms many times, we've just, we've never spoken to one another, but you give me the sense that you're obviously a relatively easygoing person. So that doesn't, and especially with you being an only child, you're like, if there's opportunities, you're probably just going to do it. You're like, oh yeah, like I'll do this. And it's like, oh, no one's around to hang out today. It's like, oh, it's fine. I'll just, play video games or whatever.
Yes. Like I'm content to be alone, but that doesn't mean I don't like interacting with other people.
Right. Which honestly, it's a very important distinction because I think most people paint with a very large brush the experience of being an only child as being like this total, shut in and introvert. Whereas I think most people that I've met that are only children do have this really this desire to connect. The idea that it's like I need this and I want this, but it's not like the core central point of your being.
Oh yeah, I mean it's kind of crazy now because I think as I get older, I kind of reflect on it. I'm like, as much time as I do like spending alone and kind of like having like my own headspace and stuff, I'll actually fall into that trapping where I do it too much and I forget the value of like being around other people, including like my close friends. Now I actually need that a lot to feel sane because when I was a kid, I didn't have anybody to talk to all day. So whenever I went to school or I hung out with my friends, I was always talking and just kind of meandering and going on and being kind of like crazy and talking about silly, imagination stuff that I was doing. And people were like, all right, just take it down a notch. And I was like, sorry. Like,
right. Sorry.
Like you kind of like word vomit because you're just sitting in this house all day and you don't have anybody to bounce that off of.
Right. No, it's a very good point. And so then I presume independent music started to infiltrate your life, like around high school is when you started to become aware of this stuff?
I'd say, in middle school you start, I think, at least for me, that's when I, like Green Day and all those, and like Nirvana, Nine Inch Nails and all that stuff was very popular in mainstream. So, and it like, you would watch that and even though those were the bigger kind of like mainstream bands, you could tell that they were different than the other stuff that was out there. So I naturally, I gravitated towards that stuff. And then by the time I was getting into high school, I'd say the summer between middle school and high school was a big time for me because that's when I found like real punk, quote unquote real punk. That's when I found out about like Fat Records and Epitaph bands.
Dude, that is the perfect starting off point, because I imagine you're probably in your mid-30s, right?
Yeah, I'm 32.
Yeah, I'm 35, and so like we're definitely the same generation where it's like once you start to get fat music for fat people and Survival of the Fattest, you're just like, oh, dude, these comps are life altering.
Yeah, I mean they were, and it was such like a good. Like, sorry. It might be weird to kind of make that, like, to show the comparison or the connection there. But I always kind of loved like 80s, like new wave pop music when I was a kid. Mm-hmm. And for some reason, like just like the hooks and the melodies, like when you listen to a band like Lagwagon or NoFX, it's like, it almost, for me, it has like the same hook and melody. I'm like, yeah, this is so catchy. I just want to listen to this. And then when you listen to it, you find out that it's kind of about stuff, and then it's like a little more like a rejection of like normal society. So you start to hold on to those values of those bands.
Yeah. Oh, I think that's an incredibly important point, because I do think that that stuff is so easily accessible for kids because, like you said, it has that pop sensibility. Like, it isn't this, overly, it's aggressive, but like not to the point of where you can't understand what Joey Cape is singing about. Like, you're just like, and then they have silly songs where they, sing about farts and coffee and stuff like that. And you're like, that's pretty cool. But then you realize that there's, like you said, there's more layers to it. And ultimately it's just pop songs played, twice as fast.
Exactly. And it's like, it's just as you said, it's very, if you had to show somebody that and you needed them to kind of digest it, that would be something that I would show them, because it's definitely more accessible than just putting on like a Coalesce record.
Totally. But I love you mentioning that just evokes a memory in my head, because like you do get this feel like when you start to view the hardcore punk scene through your only prism, and like you're not paying attention to other music around you, you're also blown away that other people don't understand it. Like, I so distinctly remember in high school, like playing Boy Sets Fire like after the eulogy, some song off the record, whether it was like Rookie or something. It was a very poppy song, and like I played it for like a school project, and it was one of those things where people were just like, that's so loud and aggressive, and I was like, this is like the poppiest song ever. I don't understand what the hell's wrong with you guys. Like, you should get into this. But yeah,
it's funny you mentioned that record in particular, because I was kind of the leader in my neighborhood group of friends who like skateboarded and stuff, where it was like, I found out about punk and hardcore, so it was my job to kind of like influence them with it. And they all listened to, Blink-182 and Coal Chamber, and that was like the band that I would use as like the gateway drug into hardcore. I'm like, well, check out Boy Sets Fire. Like, they're kind of aggressive and he sings.
Dude, that's amazing. I like that, because it shows the creative thought that you need to put into it, where it's like, because you really do only get sort of one or two shots with like certain friends of introducing them to like the stuff you're into, because otherwise they'll just be like, oh dude, Thomas is into that horrible screaming shit. Like, we're not into it. But you're like, here's the gateway. Here's the one that'll get you in.
Yeah. Like this here, like this will get you in there, and then we'll just build on top of that.
Totally. And then I can identify the other appropriate bands to show you at a later date.
Yeah. Gotta ease them into it.
Absolutely, yeah. Like you said, you don't just drop them off in the middle of the nowhere and be like, "Hey, listen to His Hero's Gone." You'll probably be super into it.
Well, I think honestly, I lucked out being like a product of like right at the tail end of the '90s, like going into '99 into like 2002. That was like a super influential time for me and my friends, because if I wanted to expose somebody at school to hardcore, that was the period of time where like a lot of bands were either playing really melodic, or even like they were getting heavier, like Poison the Well and stuff, but they still had these melodies. So I could make my friends like mix CDs and stuff that had, where I could sneak a song like Poison the Well or something even heavier like that into there, but I'd have all this padding around it. Right. It kind of worked good, because at that age, I took it as like my mission statement to get people into hardcore, because nobody at my school was really into it. Like, all the people that were into it had already graduated. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh crap, I'm alone here now. So I was like, all right, I got to get other people into this, so I'm not here alone. And it worked pretty good, and that was a good time for that.
Right. Just put Nerdy on the mixtape, and that's you're done.
Boom. Everybody likes Nerdy.
Totally. It was like the hit single that never was a single.
Yeah.
And so then obviously, as you, like you said, you were the first person to kind of, bring it to the troops, so to speak. Did you always have that intention of wanting to start a band and play in a band?
I mean, I think it was one of those things that I had like daydreamed about. I was like, oh, it'd be cool to play in a band, but I didn't know how to play any instruments. I didn't know how to write lyrics. I didn't know how to like, quote unquote sing. So I didn't really give it any real thought. The thing that I jumped into when I was getting involved is like booking shows. Like I wanted to I was like, well, if I can't do this thing, I'm going to try to help the people that do it.
Got it. So, and you, did you kind of like take to that pretty quickly? Like, did you, understand obviously the concept of booking a show and like, being somewhat responsible for trying to get people to come out to it? Or was it just, you kind of failed for a while at it?
No, I kind of took to it like a fish to water. I really loved making flyers. I'd make flyers for other people's shows just so in case somebody hadn't got one in my area, that they would get it, Like I distinctly remember making a flyer for an H2O Stretch Armstrong show that happened at like the big club in Atlanta that clearly everybody was going to know about because these were like huge bands in the hardcore scene. But I still made a flyer and handed it to people at my school.
That's great.
There's a hardcore show happening. You guys got to go to it.
So even though you, like you said, high school, you kind of fell off as far as, paying attention to education, it seemed like you did have sort of an entrepreneurial spirit inside of you of like trying to evangelize to people why the stuff that you're into is valid in some capacity. Absolutely.
I mean, I still do it to this day.
Right. That's true. Once you do that, it definitely doesn't get shaken out of you. Like it's just, that's who you are.
It's something that I'll never not be able to try to sell to somebody, if that makes any sense. Like, it's funny because like I come at it where I'm like trying to sell this product. If you like, it's not a product. It's not, I don't mean to like devalue it by saying that. So please.
Right. Yeah. You're not commoditizing it. Right.
Yeah. I'm trying to sell this product to somebody who doesn't know what it is. And it's like, I take so much, like, I invest so much personally into that because I want people to know about this because I think it's a great thing. I don't know. Sorry, I just got off topic.
No, dude, I love it because I do think, these are discussions I don't regularly have on the show, but it's such an important point because I do think that I can speak for myself and I can imagine I can speak for you as well, where it's like we feel so lucky that we got like thrown into this at the age that we did. And then it's given us, philosophical beliefs. It's given us this like backbone to stand on in everything else. Cause, whether or not you, like you mentioned, you're going into the teaching profession, the parallels between, playing in a band and getting in front of people and teaching, like it's almost 1-to-1. Like I can directly compare the two and like make a very, very valid argument for that. And so I think that that's why we feel so passionate about spreading the word, is not just because like, oh, here's some sick mosh riffs, but it's like, dude, like this is the shit that you will take in for years and years to come.
I mean, it's like another thing. Me and my wife are pregnant, and like these are the values that I'm going to pass on to my child. Like
right.
Everything I learned in life, I learned from like a Minor Threat record, as cheesy as that sounds. And I'm going to take those ideas and those values and I'm going to pass that on to my kid, who isn't going to know what Minor Threat is until she's much older, or have an understanding, but she's going to understand these values. And that's where they came from. Like, that's what blows my mind. Like, I don't know.
Well,
I love hardcore.
No, totally, dude. You and me are in the same boat, because I do think that there is something that's so inherently interesting now, because we are of an age where hardcore and punk, we're technically whatever second or third generation, but it seeped into the culture so much that it's like people from all walks of life who are doing so many different things with their talents that have been so directly influenced by independent music are now shaping culture in ways that we can't even comprehend, whether it's like the comedy world and movies or whatever. It's like all these people came from the same scene that we have and have those same experiences and want to shout it on certain different rooftops to varying degrees. But it is that important through line where it's just like, okay, now our children will know about all this stuff because we heard it from Earth Crisis record. It's just like, that's mind blowing. The thing you just said, like, it's crazy because that is what's happening. The people who like came up in hardcore and got all of their values and ideas from it are going off into like, the civilian world and building great things off of those ideas. And
that blows my mind that we like live in a time where that's happening.
Right. And it can be like digested to a point where people are like, oh, I may not like the music, but I understand the principles behind it, you know? And that's like, oh my God, like, I can't believe that.
Yes.
Yeah, that's good. Sorry. I'll try to calm us both down for speaking about why independent music is so good. But, so then, Foundation wasn't your first band that you played in, correct?
It was not.
Okay. Please divulge your first sort of musical experience from that perspective.
The first band I ever played in was a band called Final Expression. And
nice Unbroken tip.
Yeah. I was like obsessed with Unbroken. This is like right after high school. I was like, I don't think there's a better band than Unbroken. I like it. If you show it to me, I won't believe it. Like,
dude, totally.
So like, that's where I came from. I was like, I want to do a band that's kind of like aesthetically like darker, like Unbroken was. And, you know, I looked at like Dave Claiborne's lyrics. I was like, okay, like those are the kind of lyrics I want to write. And so we started this band, me and my friends, this guy, Blake Connolly, who actually went on to play in that band Dead in the Dirt.
Absolutely.
And our friend Evil Sean is his name. He's an amazing drummer. He's never been in any bands that have really broken out of Atlanta, but he, you know, you might have actually met him because he played drums on that Power and the Glory tour that went around, I think, that time in the U.S.
Okay, sure, yeah.
Filled in for drums for him. He's great. Anyway, he plays in a band here called Cloak. They're really good too. But it was basically a trio, and we wrote all this stuff in Sean's house and recorded with our friend Anthony. But it was... I'm trying to think how to describe it. It sounded like really early Converge records, like really early Converge stuff, like Unloved.
Like I was about to say like first 7-inch.
Yeah, like that kind of stuff where it was like, you know, it was very disjointed and there'd be like a little bit of like a weird melody that had like a lot of dissonance to it. And then it'd be like really crunchy and aggressive. And I had like a really high pitched voice at that time for some reason. Mm-hmm. So that was our first, you know, experience playing in a band. And we only ever played for like maybe a year or so in the Atlanta area and put up 2 demos that are not worth looking for if anybody is thinking about that.
Well, that's, yeah. And obviously you're of an age too, where it's like, you're very thankful that a lot of the stuff obviously didn't immediately go up on MySpace or Bandcamp. And obviously is there warts and all for everybody to listen to be like, oh wow, like this is how terrible this person was back in the day.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's like, you know, it's understandably bad because we were just kids. This is our first band together. We don't really know what we're doing. Mm-hmm. So I imagine that's why it sounded like the first Converge stuff, because I imagine they had no idea what they were doing either.
Of course, everyone needs to be. I always find it funny when it's like, you know, I have people on the show, and you can obviously tell when it's like this is their first band, and like not in a bad way, but it's like, you know, whatever. Speaking to Davey Havoc from AFI, it's like that's technically his first band, and it's like that's fucking insane. But it's like, but then you look at the through line of every AFI record, and you're like, oh yeah, like most people would listen to the first AFI record, answer that, and stay fashionable, and be like, that's awful. Like,
yes, you listen to that band and you go, oh, okay, I can kind of see where it's same thing with Far Side.
Dude, for sure.
I'm mentioning that because I'm looking at a record right now and I'm like, if you listen to the first Far Side 7-inch and then you listen to the Monroe Doctrine, like you're like, what the hell is going on in this band? It's like, no, they're just figuring themselves out and like getting better at their instruments.
Totally. They're becoming musicians. And I use that in air quotes.
Real bands.
Right. Totally. And so then did Foundation come obviously after that? And how long after that?
I'd say, so there was a parallel happening. Champ played in this like mildly successful hardcore band from here called Instilled.
Oh yes,
that the whole city put their hopes and dreams into. We're like, all right, this is going to be the band that leaves Atlanta and puts our city on the map. We could just feel it down in our bones.
Well, dude, I remember too that you just brought back a memory where it was like I worked at the record label Century Media for a long time, and I was doing like A&R scouting and stuff like that. And I remember, I know people will have wildly differing opinions of this human being, but like Hunter from Love Is Red, we were going to potentially sign Love Is Red, and then it was like, I think Hunter, I want to say he showed me Instilled in some way, shape, or form, but I just remember it was like, oh wow, there's a lot of stuff bubbling up in Atlanta. But that's so funny.
Yeah. So they were like, they were up and they were kind of like crushing it. Like there was a point where they had to be the headlining band on any show they played. Didn't matter if it was like the bigger touring bands coming through, because that's who people went to go see.
Wow. Which
I kind of love, like when you have like that type of loyalty in your scene. But they they were coming up. We started Final Expression, and we were all friends. We'd all been coming up together. And then Final Expression did their thing. We broke up or whatever. And then Instilled broke up. And then from the ashes of Instilled, they started that band Depression, which actually Hunter sang for as well. And it was like kind of the end of Love Is Red, the end of Instilled. So they started this band Depression that played they played a couple out of town shows, but not much. And then I'm trying to think. This is like over the span of a year.
Right.
These younger kids who had done a band called Cold Stare from Atlanta that was really good too. They technically started Foundation. It was this kid, David Pagostin and Andrew Wright. And they contacted me and they're like, hey, do you want to sing in a hardcore band? And I was like, okay. I was like, what are you guys thinking? And they're like, well, we want to do something that's kind of like early new age records, like some Outspoken, Unbroken, Undertow, that type of feel. And I was like, okay, cool. I can get on board with that. I like all those bands.
Right.
So I went to a couple of practices, and we had the drummer, this kid Billy, drumming for us from that band Overdose. Sorry, this is doesn't really matter. But
dude, anytime people pepper details like that in, it always makes me happy, because usually people are like, "Oh, that's so sick! They mentioned that band or whatever." So continue.
Yeah, he was drumming for us we hadn't even played any shows yet or anything. We were just still writing songs, and he decided that he didn't want to do it. He wanted to concentrate on Overdose. And literally the same weekend, he decided that Depression broke up. And we were like, we got to get Champ to play drums for us. Champ is the sickest drummer. Mm-hmm. So we went to this show, we went to their last show, which was on that Gorilla Biscuits reunion tour that happened back in 06 or 05. Mm-hmm. And we're like, will you play in this band? And he was like, oh yeah, I guess. Yeah, okay, I'll do it. Kind of talked him into it. And this is another little fun fact. He was like, what's the band called? And we said, it's called Turnstile.
So good.
Named after the Hot Water Music song.
Of course.
And he's like, that name, he's like, I don't like it. We got to change the band. So three of us who liked the band name gave in to one person because we wanted to play drums in the band so bad.
Dude, so good. You're like, whatever you want, whatever Champ wants, he gets.
Yeah, exactly.
That's great.
I'd say it worked out for the better anyway. We got Champ, which was the most important component to the band at the time.
Of course. Well, yeah, I mean, especially too, because as the time goes on, coming up with a band name, I mean, I can't even imagine people doing it now. It's and not even for the sake it was better back then, but just dude, you're just running out of words in the English language to potentially either combine or just use as a solitary statement. It's rough.
This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. I myself am a huge advocate for therapy, and I think that most people would benefit from it because, life just really gets in the way sometime. Whether it's a relationship issue, a family issue, a work issue, you feel overwhelmed. You don't know where to turn to. You're like, I can't bug my family and friends about this. Maybe I'll be able to, just push through it on my own. You do not need to be alone in this journey. And that is why BetterHelp is such a cool option. They are convenient because it's flexible, affordable, and entirely online. And all you do is fill out a brief questionnaire and you get matched with a licensed therapist. And you can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. I love what they do, and I would really, really encourage you trying therapy for the first time. If you want to live a more empowered life, therapy can absolutely help get you there. Visit betterhelp.com/Ray to get 10% off your first month. That is betterhelp.com/Ray. Try therapy, and trust me, it will make your life better.
It all started in 1974 when we were the original source for New York creatives. Today, Adorama's got it all. Photography, gaming, music, and more. But one thing hasn't changed. No matter your medium, Adorama helps you create no matter what. Access our vast catalog of gear. Get pro-level support and customer service from the experts. Adorama. Create no matter what. Learn more at Adorama.com.
Day 2 of my exclusively adult Virgin voyage. I've come to discover an amazing new use for my phone, shaking it to have champagne delivered to me anywhere on board. Tomorrow, it's bubbly in the bubbles. That's a nautical term for champagne in the hot tub.
Book a Virgin voyage by February 28th for 55% off your second sailor and up to $600 in free drinks. Ask your travel advisor or visit virginvoyages.com. Now we're voyaging.
I mean, Foundation is like the most unoriginal hardcore band name. There's already been, lesser hardcore bands, not to say that they were not good, but they didn't really go anywhere. Hardcore bands with that name that put out records.
There was also
it's not a great name, but it worked.
Totally. There was also I originally got confused too because the one of the guitar players in Ann Beretta had
his solo project.
Exactly, and I was like, wait a minute, is this the same band? But then of course there's 4 people that are going to know that, so I got it while you guys did that.
Well, it was that the guy who does that, I can't remember his name. I've never even met him. I only saw Ann Beretta a couple of times. He's got to be the greatest person ever because when he found out about us, the other foundation, he just didn't care. He's like, I'll continue doing what I'm doing. They'll do what they do. He's like, I don't think anybody's going to confuse it. Which foundation you're going to go see.
Right, totally. Yeah. I mean, that's very admirable of him.
Thought we were going to have to change our band name again. And I was like, damn it. We'd already kind of started doing this.
Totally.
With this name.
And so kind of reflecting on obviously the band's early years, when did you first feel like people started, obviously outside of the Atlanta scene, start to kind of pay attention to what you guys are doing? Because to me, as an outsider, obviously I'm in Southern California and, became aware of you guys. I would say it was probably after the second 7 inches when it started to, really percolate in my head. But did you notice kind of people around the country gravitating towards your band pretty early? Or did you feel like it was we had already existed for a while? So not like you expected people to care about what you were doing, but that's cool that people are catching on at this joint.
I'm trying to think. I think the time that I felt like it was kind of coming into its own, by itself without anybody's help or outside influence, was when we put out Hang Your Head. And that was the first real full US tour that we kind of did on our own. We went out to Sound and Fury and played there and came back. And that was in 2009, I think. Mm-hmm. So for the first 3 years up to that, we put out the very first 7-inch with Eightfold Path. And then we put out the Never Stops Raining single with Triple B. And those kind of got notoriety, but it was more so people we'd already known who were kind of putting us on in their town, if that makes any sense.
Right.
We had made friends in other places and they were rocking our records, so they were telling their friends, but it wasn't like some kid out in the Midwest was keen to who Foundation was.
Right.
And I think when that record came out, because Dave Sausage is he runs a bigger label, so people kind of pay attention to what 6 Feet Under is doing. People caught on to that, and then that was the summer that we did the 3 US tours, and it was okay, people are starting to remember the 7-inch songs.
I have one more fun partner to speak to you about, and that is our good friends at Weebly. So what does Weebly do? Well, first of all, do you have any idea how to build a website? If I put a computer in front of you, would you have any idea? You would look at a line of code and you would be like, I don't know what any of that is. But that makes a website. So what Weebly does is it gives you all of the tools and everything you need to build your own website. I know that sounds mind-blowingly weird that they would be able to do that, but trust me, they know what's up. So what they do is they give people the courage to start their own business and dream to be their own boss. Because, at the end of the day, we all want to be answering to ourselves and really nobody else. So you don't need to be a web designer or know how to code at all to make a beautiful website, blog, or online store. And trust me, they got the stuff on lock. So they have a wide variety of options, drag and drop. They take the guesswork out of everything that it is to create a website. So you can truly customize and update and change your site anytime you want. And this is the most important part on any device. You can be on your phone, your tablet, your computer, whatever it is, you can change it and make it awesome. So here, join the 30 million people who are already dreaming big with Weebly. Get started today for free at Weebly.com/words. That's WEEBLY.com/words. So seriously, there's no reason why you can't sign up. Have fun with this. I mean, even if it's just a simple site for yourself, or maybe your brother's getting married and you're like, I could build him a site, and that way it'll have all this info. So go to Weebly.com/words. Please do it. They're a great company. And was it ever, because even though you guys obviously, like you said, you did a ton of touring when you were kind of available, because like I get the sense that you guys were obviously still doing school, like you didn't put all the eggs in the let's tour 10 months out of the year basket. Or am I wrong in that statement? Like you guys seem to have like I would say balanced life at home, but you guys were trying to like live in both of those worlds because you weren't sure exactly where the band was going to go.
So we definitely tried to tour as much as possible, but nobody else in the band really had anything going on except for Andrew, our guitar player. He was still in college, and he was finishing that. So we basically toured around his college schedule. But I mean, anytime he wasn't in school, we were off playing weekends in like Florida, or we'd go up to the Carolinas. Any extended period of time, like a week or something, we would go up and down the East Coast. And then during the summer, obviously we were just gone the whole time. So we wanted to play. I mean, we probably, if it had been afforded to us, we would have probably been on tour 10 months out of the year, because we're not smart like to not do that.
Right. You were pretty practical as a band to be like, okay, we know that we can't do this just from sheer financial ruin that this could put us into.
Well, I mean, it wasn't even that. We did plenty of tours where we were like, I know that we're not going to like come out on top at the end of this, and not like in a way where it was like, yeah, we're eating good on tour or anything like that. Like, just, we're definitely not going to be able to pay our rent while we're gone. So we're gonna have to sell everything we own when we get home. But we would do it anyway because we wanted to get out there and we wanted to play and we wanted to go on tour with our friends. I think the thing that stopped us was we didn't want to tour without people who were in the band. So like, I didn't want to go on tour without Andrew playing guitar for us. Like, we could have got a fill in, but I didn't want to do that.
Right.
I don't think anybody else did either.
Sure. That makes sense. Yeah. You guys wanted to be the unit that you were, as opposed to, trying to push forward an agenda with 450 you there.
Yes.
And did you, just because you obviously were very opinionated lyrically in regards to, whether it was, being straight edge, whether it was obviously, having some ethics rooted as far as, animals are concerned. Obviously, when you're preaching to the hardcore crowd, that is kind of expected. But like, did you guys get any sort of feedback or flack from people being like, oh, great, like here's another, Atlanta band saying something about straight edge or whatever, like real original? Or did you guys kind of, go underneath that?
No, I mean, we never got any, I don't think, at least knowingly, that we got any flack for being outspoken about anything. We were just a straight edge band. Like, not all of us are vegetarian or vegan, but no, I don't think we ever got too much flack on that. I think what would happen is we would get grief in our own hometown for just being straight edge, like not talking about it. Like, sometimes people like, oh, like cool straight edge dudes, like, the sarcastic guy who's washed out 6 months ago,
right? Like
some smart ass comment to make at a show.
right
Yeah, but nothing, like nobody ever like just dogging us out for anything we ever said.
No, that's cool. And it did seem like there was a time, maybe like whatever 2010, 2011, maybe a little bit after that, where it was like, it did feel, and I find it so bizarre how hardcore exists in this weird, fast moving world where it's like, one summer a band can be like the hottest shit ever, and then like sometimes even less than 6 months later it's like, oh, that was cool, but like not as cool as this thing. And I understand it's kind of hardcore and punk in general is a microcosm of the real world.
Yeah.
But I did feel where it was like all of a sudden the momentum was kind of let out, and not even because you guys weren't working or weren't releasing quality music, in my opinion, but the fickleness that is the quote unquote scene. And granted, I'm painting a very large brush with that statement. But did you kind of personally notice it, where it was like, oh wow, like, there's less people showing up to the shows, or people didn't seem to like this particular thing that we put out? I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of thoughts wrapped up into that, but I always find it weird, and that's why I wanted to ask you about it, to see if you noticed.
No, I never felt that way about it. Even up until our last show, I would just go into a show like honest, like not assuming anything about it. Like, I don't know what people's tastes are. I don't like it. Does anybody care about this band anymore? Like, I'm not going to be like, well, we're here, where is everybody? Like, just people come and go. And I just always kind of chopped it up to that like, okay, like they're just not here this time, whatever. But I think what happened, especially around like 2011, 2012 is that we were kind of hitting a stride where we were like, well, we can tour more and like we can do bigger tours, and we weren't like losing our arms in the process. And that was like when we were like, okay, we don't want to tour anymore.
Right.
We're like, we'll just like stay at home and we'll kind of do some things every once in a while.
Right. Did you guys like have a sit down band meeting about this and kind of deliberately decide that, or was it kind of a, just a logical evolution?
No, I think it was weird. Like we did the Comeback Kid tour, which was really awesome. And like, it was fun hanging out with those guys and just like kind of playing to a different crowd that we would normally get to play to. And, which like, I still stand by 100% because I'm like, there's going to be a kid who is on the fringe of like punk and hardcore who comes to that show, and maybe he hears Foundation, and that causes them to like explore other hardcore bands beyond us. And like, I always look at that as a positive. But it was on that tour, I could kind of just feel that like, okay, like we weren't like, Andrew didn't do the tour with us. That was the first time we'd really done like an extended period of time without somebody. And it didn't sit right while we were there. And I don't know, it just, you could feel something in the van, like, okay, this is something that we want to like do all the time.
Interesting. So like you could see the path ahead of you where it was like, okay, we can, like you said, we can do this. We can be this sort of band. But like you didn't really necessarily like the path that it was headed down. So that's why you guys kind of diverted.
Well, I think, yeah. And I think a big component of the band for us is like, everybody came into the band with a certain fear that, because you see it happen to other bands all the time where it's like the band burns you out on either the friendships that you have in the band, and we didn't want that to happen, or the band itself burns you out on hardcore, and you just don't want to go to shows or like really be a participant anymore. And I think we all kind of knew that we didn't want that to happen to us.
Right.
Like we all still wanted to be friends. We all knew that we still wanted to be very active in our own scene back at home. And like, I mean, anybody who's ever been in like an extended, like a band that tours a lot, like those are the casualties. Like that's what happens when you're in this condenser all the time.
Right. Well, it is an interesting point you bring up too, of the idea that when you're so involved in the local scene, like whether that's either playing shows, promoting, doing whatever it is that you're doing to contribute to the local scene, once you are absent from it, not only do you feel it, but then, the scene changes in certain ways, in certain respects. And so then you come back and you're like, oh wow, like that's different. Like even if it's small things, you're like, oh, that's weird. Like the venue put up the little merch table back there. That's weird. Like, yeah, I totally understand that.
Because you're like this representative, this representative of your scene, and then you leave and you're gone for 2 or 3 months, and then you come back and yeah, things have changed, and it's not like we didn't have our input in on it. It's nothing like that. It's just like you get back and things just feel different. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't know. It's rough. You understand. You've been on tour.
No, totally. And I find it so, because usually the notion is where it's like looking at a band like what you guys were and the momentum that you had, and the fact that, like you said, you could see you could turn into a band like Terror, like not saying that Terror has made a wrong decision by what they've done, because clearly, they're happy with it, or at least from the outside perspective it is. But like, the idea of like quote unquote leaving money on the table, it's just like, oh, well, you could have been, you could have done Foundation for another 5 to 7 years and done this thing and gone to Indonesia or whatever, but then you look at the flip side of it, which I think most people don't look at the flip side. They don't look at the fallouts. Like you said, everything that made you guys decide what you did. A lot of people don't consider that, just because either it's not regularly spoken about, or it's not something that, the bright shiny lights are bigger. And when I use that in air quotes, because obviously bright shiny lights don't necessarily equate to hardcore, but you get the point I'm trying to make.
Yeah. I mean, there, especially when it comes to the end of the band, there just comes a point where we're like, what else could we possibly do? Like, okay, we didn't go to South America. That was basically it. We've been everywhere else multiple times. We've made tons of friendships. We've played some of the craziest shows. We've played with bands that we've like held as like heroes for years. Like we've shared the stage with like Trial and Bane and Terror and Hatebreed and all these other bands. And it's like, what more could we possibly get out of this band? And I feel like you know, at the end of it, like the last record we put out, I feel like those are the best songs that we'll ever write. And I don't want to like diminish that in any way.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Yeah. You don't want to string it along. The last two things I want to hit on before I let you go is the, so obviously in the wind down of the band, because you know, this was a deliberate plan. Was it, I presume in certain respects it felt bittersweet because you were, you knew the end was coming, you know, like it wasn't this, you know, blowout where it's like, oh wow, that was our last show because everybody argued and they broke up. It's not like Texas is the Reason where people are like, oh my gosh, we broke up in Germany and no one knows why. So like, was it bittersweet for you rolling up to these final shows?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when I wrote the you know, the manifesto about the band breaking up at the end, I you know, I really noted in there that like this would be easier to do if we didn't like each other or that we didn't care about this band, but we do care about the band and we love each other. Like we're all really close friends. So it makes it hard to do something like that, to just put it down and walk away. And it, you know, after we played the last show, like everything leading up to it, like all these last shows, I've been like, I almost took them for granted. Like I would forget like halfway through them that like, oh yeah, this is the last time we're ever going to come here. And this might be the last time I see these people for a really long time, you know, cause when you're on tour, it's like, oh yeah, we'll just see those people in a few months. But when you're not on tour, who knows when you're going to run into them again, unless they're on tour and they come to your town. And I would catch myself and be like, no, like just like sit in the moment for a second. Like I'm really bad at that. I'm very either stuck in the past or like thinking about the future. It's like hard for me to be in the moment. And I really try to be like mindful of that. Like, okay, just take this in for a second. This is the last time you're going to be in like Southern California. This is the last time you're going to be in Seattle. It's the last time you're going to be in Detroit. This is the last time you're going to be in Long Island, like playing here. And then even at the last show, I would watch every band play their set and be like, this is the last time I'm like going to get to share the stage with Harm's Way or King Nine or Indecision, or like this is going to be the last time that like all of our friends are here together and like for this like one collected reason, you know?
Right.
And it was super bittersweet. I thought I was going to cry before we started playing, and like somehow I got through the entire set. And as soon as I walked off stage, it was like in a movie. Somebody had put on this Abner J song, and I just like went in the back and I just sobbed. Mm-hmm. Sobbed and sobbed until Ryan Braces walked up, and I was like, oh, what's up, man? Like, I got some stuff in my eyes. Like,
yeah, you got a little dusty in the back room.
Yeah.
And so then obviously, like you've mentioned that you're training, well, not training, you're learning to become a teacher, obviously going through school and showing the fact that you obviously care about education now. Talk to me about that process, because I do find it interesting where it's like the notion is that most people, especially that are affiliated with punk and hardcore, it's like, oh, school's dumb, like you don't need that shit or whatever, like all those, you know, really common tropes. But clearly it impacted you at some point. So like, when did teaching kind of become something that you were interested in doing?
I think from being on tour, I realized that like kind of what I was doing, like I hate saying this because like I feel like it paints some type of like puts me in some type of light that I really shouldn't be in. But I feel like I would get up on stage and, you know, you've seen Foundation. We don't just get up there and play. Like I'm always going to say something regardless if it's coherent or not.
Right.
So like to an extent that was kind of like teaching, like, hey, this is what this song is about. Let me dissect it for you. Let me tell you where it comes from. You know, like, I feel like in a regard that was kind of like teaching. And I was like, I think that's something I could do. And really, even with Foundation, like so many people would come up to us and be like, oh, you know, like this song really changed my life. And you guys really got me through a difficult time. And a lot of times it's like, it's hard to like sit with that because you're like, oh, I feel so like responsible for that. But it made me feel like maybe I was helping somebody, and I want to continue to do that. I want to help people. And like the kind of teaching I plan on doing, I'm like, I'm not just going to be a content teacher. I'm hopefully going to be giving people like life skills, like to get through life, because it's not easy for some people.
No, I agree. I mean, my mother was a high school English teacher, and she retired a couple years ago. My wife is a high school English teacher, and so like I have the utmost respect not only for the profession, but then seeing firsthand what these really important women in my life do for these kids, it's like, it really isn't just teaching English. It's like about being that shoulder to cry on when, their family members don't have enough money to buy diapers for their new sister. And granted, like that's a very extreme example, but it's like, it can be something that large or something as small as like, one of your students just likes to hang out with you for 15 minutes at the end of the day. And that's a really meaningful thing to them. And you never know what that sort of impact that will give.
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the driving things for me, especially going into the field, is that because I stopped valuing education so much in high school, which was ridiculous. Like I didn't ever stop really valuing it. I just put value in a different education. Like I was getting all of my information from Chokehold and His Heroes Gone records and
of course
Minor Threat lyrics. I was like, oh, that's the truth right there. Like that's the real information.
Totally.
So I was learning in a new capacity. So like, but I want, like, I didn't have anybody for me at that age that was like, I understand that the system is like fucked up, and I understand that school is full of these like terrible cliques and people are just mean towards each other. But that's not what you should get from this. What you should get from this is like to be a seeker of knowledge. Yeah. And like I wish somebody had told me that, and then I would have like, I would have sought it out and kind of pursued that drive. But I didn't have anybody there for me, so I didn't. And I want to do that for somebody else. Like I want to be like, look, I know that this sucks. I know that this is hard, but there is a value here, and it's not just like going through the motions or like, understanding what Shakespeare said in this, this piece of writing. It's like, there's something here that is about the pursuit of knowledge. And if you continue to do that through your life, you'll be well equipped to deal with a lot of things.
Yeah, totally. No, it's very eloquently put, because it is, most of the experience of high school should be reflective on not so much the fact that you can memorize the periodic table or, learn algebra and solve for X. It's the fact that hopefully one of these things that you get introduced to will kind of scratch that, like you said, that quest for knowledge. It'll scratch that itch and it'll send you off in a whole different direction where you're just like, yo, science is sick. I love that. Like English, no way. Like that's the whole point. And it's like, if you're not encouraged, like you said, you'll end up in a place where it's like the entire experience is tainted because you're just like, oh, I don't care about anything in related to school. It's like, well, no, you probably do. You just don't think about it in those terms.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't go to college until I was in my late 20s, and like, I love college.
Right.
I literally loved every class I've taken, even the really terribly hard ones. Like I just finished up the calculus sequence, and like I loved every second of that, no matter how hard it was at times.
Right. And so what do you plan on teaching?
Mathematics.
Okay, yeah. You're teaching the real world shit.
Yeah.
And I just because you mentioned this earlier, and I find it so interesting just because I myself have a 5-year-old son. So when is your daughter due?
We're due October 17th. If she gets with the program,
sure.
She'll be born on Edge Day.
Oh my God, that's huge. Yes, so yeah. Clearly you'll have to have an Edge Day show celebration.
Yeah, absolutely. My wife would love that. We'll just set it up right in the birthing area.
Totally, she'd love that. All your friends watching the whole experience. But so like, obviously, because you're on the precipice of childbirth, is it one of those things where you're viewing a lot of things a different way, or is it just kind of like the calm before the storm, so to speak?
I'd say right now it's kind of the calm before the storm. It seems a little too early to like get like right into the heart of it. But when I do stop and think about it, I do kind of get like I get weird about like certain things. Like I'll walk into our spare bedroom, which is like going to be the nursery, and I'll just think about like my kid is going to like find herself in this room.
Right.
Like my mom just sent me a picture today. She's like, converted your old bedroom into like the baby's room for when you guys come over here. And I was like I'm tying this all together now. Like, and it's going to sound cheesy, but it's like that's where I listened to the Gorilla Biscuits for the first time, was in that room. And like, that's where I found myself. That's the spot. That's the ground zero for creating the person that I am today. Sure. And she's going to have that experience in this house. So I look in that room and I'm like, oh my God, like that's where it could all lead somewhere great, or it could go terribly wrong.
Right. No, yeah. It's like, that's where the experience is. Like, this is more than just a space or a room. Like this is everything, It's like these 4 walls that like Because like I always love the notion of people trying to say that like you're ready to like have a child. It's like no one wakes up one day and is like, you know what, I'm ready. I am physically ready to have a child. It's like no one wakes up and does that, but it's like you just figure it out and you do it. And I mean, one thing that you'll probably find in the parenting experience is that like no one has any idea what they're doing. Like everyone has the best practices and best information. And of course, our parents did so many things wrong that, you know, their parents probably did wrong as well. And it just goes back generation to generation. And then you realize that no one has any idea. We're all just taking stabs in the dark, trying our best to put our best foot forward. But like, I really find it charming the way that you just described that, the space where it's like that's something that you can become wistful for and be like, wow, like this is not only a heavy responsibility, but it's just full of excitement too.
Yeah. And you know, I know that nobody knows what they're doing because I'm actually lucky enough that Champ, my best friend, drummer of Foundation, they're pregnant as well, and they're due in August, and I don't have to go through it alone.
Right.
So, you know, as they say, two wrongs do make a right. So
you guys can be like, all right, maybe one of these kids can come out relatively unscathed.
No, it's great because like if I make a mistake, I can tell him about it, and so he doesn't make it, and you know, vice versa. He can make the mistake and be like, "Don't do that. I did it, and it did not work right."
Totally. No, that's cool. Well, I'm very excited for not only you, but obviously Champ as well. And that's it's great when you obviously see you know, people like we've been, you know, pining over this past hour, people that are obviously coming from our scene and being able to instill values that are not of the norm and be like, oh, like there's a different way that you can view the world and not just the you know, standard cookie cutter way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, dude. Honestly, I really, really appreciate you hanging out with me.
No, thank you.
As a PS to this interview, Thomas did not mention two ex-members of Foundation that he said, or he did not mention during the interview, Hank and Caleb. Sorry, I'm horrible at pronunciation, but he wanted to give those dudes a shout out because he didn't mention them in the interview. And how sweet is that? So yeah, here's the real intro. So there was Thomas. Great dude, right? And I appreciate for him to take the time out of his schedule because I think the day that we recorded it, he had a test or something, but he was busy. And I find it so nice that people, when I approach them and they're like, hey, would you like to come on the show and talk about yourself? You know, most people obviously like that idea, but just to take the time and fit it into their schedules, it's always so nice and humbling. And that means, you know, the show is worth something. And that also makes me feel the warm and fuzzies inside. So yes, and please support the sponsors of the show because they obviously make things happen for me over here by obviously giving me money in order to justify talking into microphones to my wife and my child who are like, hey, what are you doing this thing for? And it's like, well, honey, I'm making money. Even though that is a complete side effect of why I'm doing this in the first place, but you get the point nonetheless. Let's see. Next week is it's a very, very insightful and interesting interview with a guy named Andy Ostling. He is from a project/band called Lowercase Noises. And I'm just very excited about this conversation because we went into some really, really introspective and deep places because he is a deep dude. He's definitely not just your surface level guy. And Lowercase Noises, as you know, supplies the music for this show. So that is one of the things that came about our relationship. And he was excited to contribute. And I was so excited to have that music as a nice little bed for everything we do at this show. So, yeah, until next week, please be safe, everybody, on your summer travels. And, enjoy yourselves. Be safe, everybody.
You've been listening to the Jabberjaw Podcast Network, jabberjawmedia.com. Shh.
We creatives are the achievers, the doers, the believe when no one else does dreamers. We create no matter what. From cameras to mics, lenses, and lights, Adorama has what you need to turn your dreams into a reality. So to you designers, photographers, filmmakers, musicians, we say keep going. It's time to gear up because the world needs your creativity more than ever. And Adorama is your creative partner to help you create no matter what. Go to Adorama.com and equip your creativity. That's Adorama.com.
Wear your story wherever you go. We're Golden, a woman-owned jewelry studio in La Conner, Washington. We create personalized pieces that truly represent you. Crafted with precious metals, freshwater pearls, and ethically sourced gemstones that'll last a lifetime. Our made-to-order process keeps costs low, and handmade charm high, and means no one will have a piece quite like yours. Find a treasure you'll adore forever. GLDN.com. Jewelry that means more.
Ugh, I wish I owned a car. It'd make weekend day trips, seeing the fam, and last-minute errands so much easier.
You don't need to own a car for that.
Really?
Check out Zipcar. They let you book cars from your phone 24/7. It's super affordable because you only pay for the time you need, plus gas and maintenance are included.
Yeah, but bet it costs more in the long run.
Nope. Members save hundreds a month compared to car owners.
Okay, I'm checking them out.
Use the Zipcar app to book a car near you in minutes for a few hours or a weekend. Join instantly at zipcar.com. Zipcar. You don't need to own a car to have one.